Hello guys, it's Modest Major here, bringing you some live commentary today. I'm going to be doing some Halo 3 Action Sack, which my girlfriend actually played some of this yesterday, if you watch yesterday's video. And it kind of got me hankering for a little bit of casual action. I wanted to play some Action Sack today, and see how it goes. I haven't actually played it really since MCC too much, if ever, really. So I don't know what the full multitude of game types is on it. But I thought I'd give it a try here today. And it also kind of led me into, I want to talk about casual options in the newer Halo Infinite game, because it is kind of something I'm a little bit worried about, is whether or not they're gonna. I'm kind of a little bit short on everything right now. I feel pretty sold on a lot what they've shown. I think a free roaming experience for campaign is a great direction to go in, and I think it's a natural evolution for the Halo franchise. And I think multiplayer-wise, in terms of them using stuff like a battle pass and them having a dedication to multiplayer updates, where there's going to be free DLCs. Obviously, the fact that the multiplayer in general is just free, I think, is a great idea because it's so hard in the modern gaming industry to get people on board straight away, especially if there's a lofty price tag on it. Halo doesn't really have the luxury anymore of just being one of two massive shooters, so people are more willing to give it a try. Or if you take into consideration the fact that there were so many people, there was such a high install base on the Xbox 360, there was just more of a likelihood that people were going to check out Halo 3, give it a try. But now we don't really have that luxury. I think it makes sense to go free to play, and we've already kind of proven within Halo 5 and within gaming as a whole, to be honest, that microtransaction skins and aesthetics are something that are gonna sell and that people are interested in and that will bring in enough money. Um, so really, the only thing that I'm actually worried about with the new Halo is whether or not they can get the hearts and minds of the casuals on board, because it's definitely something you need to consider. If you look at like some of the big competitors like Fortnite have their casuals on board. If you think about the actual gameplay mechanics, a lot of Fortnite can be quite tricky to wrap your head around. Like for me, for example, if I go into Fortnite, one of the things that can put me off the main game is building. I'm awful at building in that game. I think it takes a really long time to wrap your head around it. You can train at it for ages and still not be the best builder going. You can probably pick up a few kills in the squad death matches, but you might have a hard time wrapping your head around some of the gameplay mechanics. But the thing about Fortnite is Fortnite isn't only limited to its regular matchmaking. If you look on YouTube, there's so many custom game options that people explore in Fortnite, and mods and things of this nature that people want to play within the Fortnite ecosystem, that you don't only have to get into that game via the use of just grinding matchmaking battle royale. I think it can get a little bit tedious, and I think more and more over time, especially as the hype of battle royale start to wear off, a game needs to bring more to the table than just its battle royale mode or just its multiplayer mode. And with Halo Infinite, my only concern is that they haven't really shown off anything that they're trying to, like a side mode or a game type that might necessarily get people on board. And then also, if you put on top of this the fact that there's not going to be Forge and there's not going to be, the different custom game options that we generally see as a result of Forge, I think that could be a problem going into the launch. People are going to want to get these side options, and you don't want them to come into Halo Infinite, get frustrated by the multiplayer, and then ditch it in a couple of weeks because something else came around the horizon. Maybe Battlefield launched, maybe they got back into the new Call of Duty. And with Halo Infinite, I think it's important that they look at their options when discussing, and thinking about whether or not. To me, a battle royale would be a great side mode in Halo. Like I said, you don't want a battle royale to be the only mode and the only pivotal experience in a matchmaking play space. I think as long as it's counterbalanced alongside other aspects, I definitely think it's something that could work. And I'm one of the biggest battle royale haters out there. I don't like battle royale, and I'm not the biggest enjoyer of it, to be honest. I think it's, to me it gets a little bit boring, especially if I die early. I have to wait for a long time. But I think within Halo itself, it could just work really, really well with the vehicle sandbox, with the, sort of fantasy map aesthetics that can come into play. I think it would just work really well with a sense of scale that Halo can bring to the table and operate under. Vehicles like the Falcon, the Wraiths, the tanks. It's got such a good vehicle play space, which honestly is something that's kind of often missing from the BTB aspect in other battle royales. If you look at Warzone, a lot of their vehicles are just kind of like cargo vehicles or vehicles just to get from point A to point B, and there hasn't always been that much of an excitement. You don't have the iconic nature of vehicles that you find in Halo. And even to me, you take in the boarding aspect as well, then the vehicles don't feel quite as annoying because there's a counterbalance to the vehicles, and it kind of works in that sense. If you had a boarding aspect or a boarding mechanic in Call of Duty, it might not necessarily work because they're striving for more realism. So the idea of, skyjacking someone out of a plane in midair probably isn't going to work so well, or isn't going to make as much sense in a military game as it does in a game like Halo. Where you don't want vehicles. I mean, if I go back and play Battlefield, for example, vehicles are one of the most annoying things ever because it's so hard. You really have to have a plan of attack when taking someone out of a tank if they're entrenched in a position and if they're on the team that are doing superior. Chances are they're probably hiding somewhere near the back of the map and they're spawn camping the ever-loving shit out of you, and there's just no way of routing around that enemy. Whereas in Halo, I feel like the counters are a lot more solid. You know which vehicles in the play space can be countered by which weapons. You've obviously got the boarding action. I feel like there's so many ways that you can encounter a vehicle that work differently, and I think that would make for a pretty interesting battle royale. Not to mention, I think you could do something with ODST lore-wise to have Battle Royale make a little bit more sense. Maybe it's its own separate fledged out mode where you drop in ODST drop pods and there's something to it there. I think that would appease both long-term Halo fans and, maybe get some casuals invested. It's something new, it's something exciting, and I think really it's kind of the one aspect where I'm a little bit lost on Halo Infinite, because we can't just have a community solely thriving on a competitive experience. If you look at a game like CSGO is one of these games that its other casual modes, sure, it has the custom games, like it has the surfing and it has arms race, for example, but nothing really takes off as much as the Team Slayer. But at the same time, they have their loot boxes that do massive work, or their drops, I should say, where you can kind of open the boxes and you can hope for a big drop. That's kind of what gave CSGO a lot of steam. There's generally in these big matchmaking experiences one aspect of the gameplay that kind of rockets it above its competitors, in that it's got more variety than you would see elsewhere. And with Halo Infinite, I don't want the matchmaking to be this sort of, especially as you've got to buy into the campaign. You're actually not getting the campaign as its, additional free aspect to the multiplayer. The campaign's not really going to lift Halo into loads and loads and loads of more people playing, because some people can just try the multiplayer and not even get invested in the campaign. The campaign's going to have to sell itself on its own merits, whereas the multiplayer is going to be its own space. And whilst it is free to buy in terms of longevity, it's going to need something to get its hooks into people and get people really playing in the long term. And I think, with Halo 4, we saw them launch with aspects like the Flood, which is, they tried to appeal to the casuals. I don't think they did a very good job whatsoever, because the Flood was essentially Infection, but with reskinned enemies of the Flood. And I think, to me, that they're going to have to find something that kind of appeals to everyone. And I think Firefight is kind of past its prime in relation to what they can do, unless they came up with a new spin on Firefight. I think we've had Horde modes around for so long, with obviously starting with Gears of War, then we get Firefight in Halo, even Fortnite had its own sort of take on that, which didn't really do too well. Plants vs Zombies, Garden Warfare had its own, Horde sort of mode. I think realistically, the idea of them selling themselves based on having a good Horde mode is kind of worn off, unless you did something really, really new and exciting in it. A lot of those modes seem to fall off in quite a short space of time. So I think moving forward, if you look at Halo 5, Halo 5 really didn't have a lot going for it in terms of its casual options. And I've actually heard a lot of people, even if they end up liking, the first thing you've got to get people on board with the Halo 5 mechanics, which can be a little bit tricky for new players. Ooh, that was a good kill. There's a lot to Halo 5 mechanics to unravel. But then if you put on top of that the fact that it didn't really have Forge matchmaking Forge custom games at first, and it didn't really have any side modes, there wasn't really much reason to play Halo 5 beyond grinding the matchmaking, getting good, watching competition in multiplayer in the long term. I don't think it did one of the weaker jobs going, and I think that went to the detriment. Obviously, you had Warzone as the big side mode, but Warzone itself, I mean, it had its kind of meta center around warfare where one team was getting spawn camp and one team was getting destroyed. And whilst it's not conventionally competitive in the sense of, regular Halo matchmaking, it kind of became that way slowly over time. And I think it was only really like stuff like the skins and the unlockables that really grip the casuals in long term. But for the most part, at least in the circles that I played with, most people seem to get frustrated by Warzone in the long term because it didn't really have that long term sustainability of something fun to do. There were so many ways of countering vehicles in that playlist. Probably too many ways, if anything, because if you were a scrub, let's say, and you wanted to play Halo matchmaking in Warzone and just kind of avoid people, stay in a vehicle, it was pretty hard to do that in Halo 5 unless you knew what you were doing, because anyone could spawn in, incineration cannons, rocket launchers. You could literally buy them. So if you were on the stronger team that were making a bunch of money and had a bunch of capital behind you, you weren't really going to be able to get away with like camping in one of those flying vehicles for too long. A good team is going to find their way around that really, really quickly. So, yeah, I just kind of hope that they have something up their sleeves, because right now, unless I'm being naive, the way I look at Infinite, I don't really see something from the offset where they have like an initial casual mode that's going to take off, or that they're even trying to push, right? Like, it's kind of been more of a focus on the campaign at first for the first month, and then we're talking about the technical previews and how they're going to sell that. I think there's steps like Infection could go and they could take it in to differentiate the experience and bring something new. Like obviously, like in Left 4 Dead, for example, we see like Left 4 Dead versus modes. What if you tried to do something where there was different like enemy types, like Elite, Covenant, Brutes, and they were like interchangeable, like playable as different characters, or even just multiplayer BTB modes where you could play as like the different units, and it was a little bit more freeform of an experience. It's just something to consider, really, because I don't want Halo Infinite to launch and it kind of set its sights entirely on a competitive circuit, or on a multiplayer only basis. I think it's going to need something, that little icing on the cake, or that, have you heard of this new mode in Halo matchmaking, which kind of it brings something different. It's something for you to try. And the best thing about those kind of modes is, because of it being free, you don't have that same problem of, well, I'm not just going to buy a new game in the hopes that this new mode that I haven't tried yet is good. People are going to try whatever mode because it's free. Why wouldn't you? Like, there's way more likelihood of getting people on board to try a new idea. So I think it's a better time than ever to implement a new idea and to like be a little bit more radical with multiplayer options, which is why I'm surprised they've really completely ignored the idea of Battle Royale altogether. Like, I think there's a sense of they didn't want to push the boat too much, and I think in history where they've kind of copy and pasted Call of Duty mechanics in the past, I think they probably want to get away from that look and that identity. They don't want Free for Free to be this company that like, oh, Call of Duty did perks, so we'll do perks, or Call of Duty did kill streaks, so we did kill streaks. And whilst I think it's smart to like veer that way in some directions, it's also smart to look at what your competitors are doing and kind of take and modify and take what you need to take, but don't take what you don't. Whilst I think it's definitely bad to like look at something and just take it for what it is and like, oh, it worked here, so maybe it will work in our game too. I think it's important to say, well, what does work in our game? What could work in our game? And actually, like, kind of study the industry as a whole instead of just, you know, marking something off because you don't want to be a copycat. Maybe there's ways you can take Battle Royale and then edit it in the Halo universe so it has its own appeal and own unique, you know, approach to the game without feeling overly derivative and offering something that other games can't. Because I think the way that the vehicles interact with the humans and the way that the power weapons interact with people on the map, I think there's just way more scope for what you can achieve there in relation to a lot of other games. And I think completely ignoring it just seems a little bit short-sighted to me. You know, and I hate Battle Royales. I'm not the biggest lover of Battle Royales. I'll go out of my way to say that time and time again. You know, really, Apex Legends was the only one I committed any time to, and that's because of its similarity to Titanfall. And I thought Titanfall, you know, was a great game. I thought Titanfall 1 and 2 are both really, really good multiplayer games. But if you ask me to play Call of Duty Warzone for a long sitting, or, you know, God forbid, PUBG, I would literally fall asleep to the point my eyes are just melting out of my eye sockets. I didn't really gel with Battle Royales. I hate the idea of dying and then you're left out of the experience. I know that they tried to counteract that with those cards that you can like buy back in with. This guy's been so lame. Get owned. You know, it would just to me it would make way more sense to actually identify what are the, you know, the points and the pros and cons of what a Battle Royale wants. So people want it, right? At the end of the day, people want it in some form, so it's worth looking at. There is always the chance they'll look at it post-launch, of course, but like I say, I don't want Halo Infinite to fall into a pitfall of, you know, it really doesn't have much going for it at launch in terms of like its variety, because that's what Halo has staked its claim on. It has a lot for everything. It has something for everyone. And you know, a lot of my friends wouldn't have gotten into Halo if it wasn't for the like sheer variety that Halo had to bring. If they just came in and I said, hey, come roll 4v4 matchmaking with me, they would have had a dreadful time, because Halo takes a while to wrap your head around, and it's kind of better to wrap your head around it with something like Infection or, you know, Fat Man or one of its, like, you know, various famous custom games. But anyway, I've been Modest Major. I hope you guys enjoyed this commentary. Peace out.